You told the New York Times, quote, "I have two little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that." I know that you have put out a follow-up statement. I do want to give you a chance to explain your comments because you know they have faced backlash.
And look, I was just speaking authentically as a dad about one of many issues where I think we're just out of touch with the majority of voters. And I stand by my position. Maybe I didn't get all the words exactly right. But the point is that the backlash I've received proves my point that we can't even have these discussions as a party. I mean, the chairman of the Massachusetts Democratic Party wouldn't even return my phone call. And we've got to be able to have these debates. But instead, we have a wing of our party that shames us, that tries to cancel people who even bring up these difficult topics, and frankly, shames voters. This is the same group of people who told us to defund the police, who told us that there wasn't a problem at the southern border, who told us that inflation was transient, whatever that means, and who told us that Biden was just fine. And they're out of touch with voters. If we just listen to voters on all of these issues, they were telling us the truth. So we've got to be willing to have these debates. I'm willing to have my mind changed. In fact, I've had some really good conversations in just the last few days with LGBTQ advocates and others, some of whom agree with me, others who don't, but are willing to engage in a thoughtful discussion rather than just trying to cancel one person or another. But we've got to have these debates now to come up with a new strategy for the party, a winning strategy, so that come January, we can be totally united to defeat the Trump agenda.
Let me just review what's happened since making the statement. I know you have faced calls to resign. I know a top aide stepped down. Certainly members of the trans community have said they're deeply hurt. And Donald Trump has used this as a wedge issue, has spent tens of millions of dollars in anti-trans messaging attacking Kamala Harris. Do you fear co-opting this Republican message doesn't represent Democrat ideals of standing up for all people's rights?
No, we're not co-opting the message. The point is we've got to win this debate. We've got to actually come up with a reasonable position on this that's appealing to most Americans. And then we'll actually win this debate when the Republicans try to shove down their radical position against us. And this applies to so many issues across the board. I mean, we have to have a reasonable position that appeals to the majority of Americans on immigration, which we know is a major issue. I mean, the crisis at the southern border is affecting every community in America today. It's affecting us way up here in Massachusetts. And a lot of Americans feel that Democrats are just out of touch with this border security crisis. So instead of allowing Trump to just get away with deporting millions of Americans, I mean, his terribly immoral border policies, let's have a serious debate about what border security looks like for Democrats and make sure that we bring in a lot of different views on this. Remember, it wasn't that long ago that we had Democrats on TV literally denying that there was even a crisis at the border at all. We've got to have that debate. And let's talk about the economy, too. I mean, I think we have a real discussion to have about what economic populism looks like for Democrats. How do we address the brutal income inequality? How do we push back against a Republican Party that just wants to cut taxes for the rich, and yet all the polls show is trusted more on the economy than Democrats? These are real problems for us that we've got to come to terms with. We've got to face ourselves, look ourselves in the mirror and say, how do we do better? How do we get back in touch with the majority of American voters? Listen to these issues that whether we agree with them or not, they care about, and we've got to come up with ways to connect with them better. I mean, talk about the police, for example. Like, we're not supposed to talk about supporting the police. We were just told to defund the police. But actually, the police are really important to security in our communities. You know, I value the police. I know that the police keeps an eye on my house when I get the occasional death threat, and I really count on them to protect my family. And yet, as Democrats, we're not supposed to support the police. I mean, that's just so out of touch with American voters. So let's have these actual debates and not cancel people for simply bringing this stuff up.